Hello, I'm Mike Clarke from Queen's University Belfast in Northern Ireland, and it's my pleasure to spend the next 20 minutes or so talking to you about evidence-based research, reflecting on its past, present and future in the context of a paper that we published in JAMA in 1998. It's this paper. And it looked at the discussion sections in reports of controlled trials published in general medical journals. We place it in context. Evidence-based research should design the new study on the basis of a systematic review of what has gone before. Integrate the findings of the study in the context of what has gone before. And the work that was published in JAMA in 1998 came from a presentation to the third peer review congress in Prague the previous year. And in that presentation, we sought to answer the question, was a systematic review included or mentioned in the discussion section of each of the 26 reports of randomised trials published in May 1997 in Annals of Internal Medicine, BMJ, JAMA, The Lancet and the New England Journal of Medicine. The story began even before then. In 1996 in JAMA, the first version of the consort statement was published, which many of you will be familiar with as guidance on the reporting of clinical trials. And what did it say about this concept of evidence-based research? What did it say about discussion sections? It recommended state general interpretation of the data in light of the totality of the available evidence. So that was one of the recommendations in the first consort statement. And it stimulated the idea of doing the research that was published in 1998. But we can go back even further. Let's go back a further 10 years. Lancet 1986, the report of the ISIS-1 trial, which looked at atenolol for the treatment of people with a suspected myocardial infarction. If you jump to its discussion section, what does it include? It includes the results of what we would now call a meta-analysis of the similar trials. Figure 2 presents the mortality in the ISIS-1 trial and all the other available trials of intravenous beta blockade for acute myocardial infarction. So here's an example from 1986, but let's look further into that issue of the Lancet. An accompanying editorial talking about the ISIS-1 results also had this. The ISIS paper has a lengthy tailpiece reviewing previous randomised trials of beta blockade. There is good case for such analyses, but if anyone suggests that they should become a regular feature of clinical trial reports, the Lancet would lead the opposition. So here we have an article doing what we would like to see done now, but in an editorial that accompanied it, caution from the journal. Let's also think, what is this research all about? Well, health and social care research should allow us to predict what might happen in the future so that we can improve health and well-being and prevent premature deaths. That's what we're in as we work as researchers. So why do researchers conduct and report randomised trials? Well, it's to move research forward. It's to improve healthcare. It's to enhance their career, perhaps. And if they place their findings in the context of a systematic review, that should help with all three. But the question was, do they do it? And the question remains today, do they do it? So what did the authors expect to happen by publishing their trials if they didn't put them in the context of an up-to-date systematic review? Did they want readers to focus on their new findings only, or did they want readers to construct a systematic review for themselves? If they wanted to do those three things on the previous slide, they, as the authors, should have done it. So let's go back to the 1998 paper. And we looked in that paper, in the discussion sections, for each of those 26 reports of trials from those 5 major journals, to see, was it the first trial of the question? Did it contain an updated systematic review integrating the new results? If it didn't, did it discuss a previous review but without any attempt to integrate the results? Or was there no systematic attempt to set the new context in the context of previous trials? Maybe some trials were mentioned, but no clear indication that those trials had been systematically identified and included. What did we find? Well, one appeared to be the first trial, 4 mentions of previous reviews, and 10, no apparent systematic attempt. What about integrating the systematic review with the new results? 2 of them, 2 of those first 10. What did we conclude? Those who turn to reports of trials to help guide treatment deserve nothing less than a discussion of the totality of the relevant evidence, picking up on the text from the consort statement that had appeared earlier. To paraphrase John Donne, no trial is an island, entire of itself. Every trial is a piece of the continent, a part of the main. Moving on, that led to what we'll now be presenting to you, Islands, what we're calling Islands 25. Because the Islands work was repeated, and Phil Alderson, Ian Chalmers, Sally Hopewell and myself, in 97, 2001, 2005, 2009, 2012, and this year, 2022. Again, same 5 medical journals, looking at the reports of randomised trials to answer 2 questions now. Does the introduction section mention a systematic review that was used in the design of the trial? We've done that since 2009. Does the discussion section include an updated systematic review integrating the results of the new trial, or mention a systematic review of the same topic? So both questions posed since 2009, the discussion section since the 1998 paper, which looked at the May 1997 reports. So here's the result for the introduction sections to begin with, and then I'll come back to the discussion sections. So 2009, 29 reports of trials, 5 claiming to be the first trial, 1 appearing to have used an updated systematic review to help design the trial, describing it clearly in the introduction section, 10 previous reviews discussed, 4 discussing other trials, and no mention of other trials, no mention that they were claiming to be the first trial in 9 of them. Repeated in 2012, 35 reports of trials now in the sample from May of that year. 5 first trials, 1 review being used to design, clearly being used to design the new trial, 13 previous systematic reviews mentions, 10 mentions of other randomised trials, and 6 no reference to other trials, reviews, or any claim to be the first trial. And then this year, 2022, 34 reports of trials, and again you can see a fairly similar pattern, but perhaps with an increase in the number of trials that are reporting a systematic review in their introduction section as part of the background for this new trial. But a few more are using a review, clearly using a review to design the new trial, but it's still the vast majority are not taking that step. But we are seeing an increase over time in the number that are mentioning reviews, but maybe that shouldn't be surprising given that we've gone from perhaps a few thousand reviews in the 1990s to hundreds of thousands of reviews now. There is many more reviews available for researchers to use in their reports. Let's step back to the discussion sections, and let's jump you to the next time that this was done in 2001. 33 reports of randomised trials in the May 2001 issues of those 5 journals. 3 appeared to be the first trial. None of them did what had been done in the 1997 sample, integrating the findings into a new updated systematic review. Previous review mentioned in a few of them, no apparent systematic attempt in the majority of them. 2004, 18 trials, so a drop in the number of trials reported in May of that year. Again, no updated systematic reviews integrating the results of the trial. Bumping along, low numbers of reviews being mentioned, and more than half of them making no apparent systematic attempt to place the trial's findings in context. We go to 2009, 29 reports, another one with an updated systematic review in the discussion section, and the tending now to start increasing the mentions of reviews. 2009, results were published in a research letter in The Lancet in 2010, and it was accompanied by an editorial. And what did the editorial say? Well, it actually highlighted that in July 2005, Lancet editors wrote that we will require authors of clinical trials submitted to the Lancet to include a clear summary of previous research findings and to explain how their trials findings affect this summary. It was published alongside the research letter, which they highlighted in the editorial, concluded that there is no evidence of progress since 1997 and that editors and authors are not informing sufficiently those who have to make decisions about healthcare. At the Lancet, we feel especially ashamed in view of our earlier commitment. How can editors guide authors to achieve this goal? The Lancet has decided to ask authors to put their work into context of what has gone before, and to add a panel to the discussion section, and this is still there in the Lancet, the Research in Context panel. We looked again in 2012. What did we find across these 5 journals? 35 reports of randomised trials from the May issues, pattern not changing very much, and if anything, going in the wrong direction. Again, we're up to more than half of those reports of those randomised trials had no apparent systematic attempt in their discussion section to place the findings in the context of other research. So what did we do? We moved on to start thinking about Islands 25. And we searched the journals all over again in May of 2022. And we found 34 reports of randomised trials. Only one with an updated systematic review and a meta-analysis in this case in its discussion section, a report of the remdesivir results from the Solidarity trial in COVID-19 in the Lancet. Here's the data. 7 first trials in those 34, 1 updated systematic review integrating the new results. Happier times, 17. Now mentioning other reviews, but again, as I've said, that's against a background of a massive increase in reviews over these 25 years. And 9 with no apparent systematic attempt to place the findings. Standout figures, well, 73% of all of the articles, or 76% if we discount the article claiming to be the first trial in 1997, made no apparent systematic attempt to set the new results in the context of other trials. 2022, it's reversed. From 3/4 not doing it down to 1/4, 26% of the 34 reports, or 33% of the 27 reports that were not claiming to be the first trial had no systematic attempt in their discussion section that was apparent to us as we checked those sections. On a positive note though, over half of all of the 34 reports, and 2/3 if we discount the reports that appeared to be the first trial, did mention or did include a systematic review. But again, remember, only 1 integrated the findings of the new trial into the context of what had gone before. So what would we conclude from this and the reflections on what might happen, what could happen into the future? People making decisions about health and social care need to feel confident when using the results of randomised trials. This requires trials to be designed in light of other similar research to ensure that they are really needed and will answer a relevant question. We don't want research waste. We don't want trials being done that are not needed because the answer is already out there. We don't want trials being done that are not answering the question that really matters. We don't want trials being done in ways that are suboptimal. We need trials to become more efficient and more effective ways of identifying beneficial and harmful effects of health and social care, so that that information can be used to improve health and well-being and prevent premature deaths. It also requires that when the trial is over, trials need to be reported in the context of other similar research, so that the users of that report are able to consider the totality of the relevant evidence. Again, if I take you back to one of the early slides, if the authors don't do that, who's going to do it? The reader is not going to be able to do it. But maybe we need to start thinking about some intermediary reflecting on the 25 years where we have seen an increased reference to systematic reviews in the discussion section, but we have not seen any increase in the number of discussion sections that include an updated systematic review integrating the findings. At present, if I reflect, over 25 years, there have been some improvements. Mostly those improvements seem to have appeared in the last decade. Again, Islands was paused from 2012 till now. And we don't know when did things start being different. We didn't do a 2016 or a 2017 one, but in 2022 it's certainly looking better than it was looking even a decade ago, and certainly much better than it was looking 25 years ago. For the future, well, researchers designing trials need to build from an up-to-date systematic review, and those responsible for reporting trials need to ensure that this is done in the context of an up-to-date review. That's what evidence-based research needs. 1998 paper, we concluded the best way to report the findings of a new trial in the context of earlier studies would be to include an updated systematic review in the discussion section. So that's what was written 1998. Let's also look at what the Lancet 2010 editorial was saying. Authors should either report their own up-to-date systematic review or cite a recent systematic review of other trials, putting their trial into context, but not necessarily undertaking a formal meta-analysis, which is beyond the scope of most authors and can be a paper in its own right. And it's important to reflect back to that from the 2009 sample that led to the 2010 paper and led to the accompaniment of that paper by this editorial, recognizing that maybe the full-blown meta-analysis is not something that should be seen in the discussion sections. And we do need to reflect on that and how that might be achieved, if not in the discussion section. So the 2022 approach might be to say that the best way to report the findings of a new trial in the context of earlier studies would to be reporting an updated systematic review within or alongside that trial. Maybe we need to find a mechanism that will plug the results of the new trial into the previous systematic review or into a collection of the evidence or into a new meta-analysis. And maybe that is something that shouldn't be seen as the responsibility solely of the researchers who've done the new trial. Reflect back. Evidence-based research should design the new study on the basis of a systematic review of what has gone before. Integrate the findings of the new study in the context of what has gone before. And if we step back to the 1998 paper, one of the conclusions was, if in planning their study the trialists had to identify and consider relevant prior research, then the production of a systematic review to incorporate their eventual results should be much easier. In addition, with the rapidly increasing number of systematic reviews, trialists should be increasingly able to find a ready source for the context in which to set their research. 1998, a sense that the number of reviews is rapidly increasing, a sense that it should become easier and easier for researchers to do this, a sense that if only they did it before they did their new study, it would be so much easier for them to plug things in. That was in 98. We're still not seeing that integration inside the reports of trials, and maybe that's why we need to start thinking about ways that we can get reviews updated alongside the new trial, if not within the new trial. So thank you very much for listening. I look forward perhaps to an Islands 30, Islands 40, Islands 50. We've no plans to do those. We hope that if somebody does do that, and maybe one of you watching will go away and plan and do this in those years to come. We look forward to seeing better evidence-based research, better use of existing evidence to design new studies, better use of existing evidence to place those new studies in context, and possibly a new approach to figuring out how to place those research findings in the context of the totality of the available evidence, so that the hopes of the first draft of the first version of Consort can come to fruition, and so that the lengthy tail piece that the Lancet editors didn't want appearing in many publications after that report of ISIS 1, maybe that lengthy tail piece is alongside and not within the report of the trial. Thanks very much.